Good evening, folks. Very late start today, at least for the streaming. I have been playing offline for a bit. I went and completed Kyrgyzstan for the renown, at least up to what I can do for now, so that I could get that extra skill point. And then I'm assuming it's going to send us to Hawazar here soon as part of the story. So we'll deal with that when I get there. Continuing my rogue, I have made a few changes. So I now have this. I got this while I was grinding dungeons for renown and stuff in Kyrgyzstan. Critical strikes with poison imbued skills have up to a 10% chance to create a toxic pool that deals 1701 poisoning damage over 3 seconds to enemies within. While standing in the pool, your poison imbuement skill has no cooldown and no charge limit. So that's pretty cool. That's going to work really well with me laying poison trap. Simply because it'll, enable me to take advantage of that. And then I replaced the ring I had before, which was, I did a small amount of damage. Yeah, when hitting targets that were poisoned with a shadow imbued skill, would create like a toxic explosion. It was just to spread poison more. But right now I'm deciding to try this out, see how it goes. Yeah, so we will go from there. And then I'm watching also. Let me see. I better get my chats out, just in case anybody decides to join in there. There we go. All right. So I am over. Yeah, somewhere. I don't know where I'm at right now. I don't think it necessarily. I'm back over in Fractured Peaks. Going to continue the main story quest here. I'm assuming it's going to send me down into Hawazar soon, but we'll see. I do have my horse and stuff, so I'm only short by two skill points. Now, one alternative I could do too is, instead of poison trap, I could go the death trap route. The thing I don't like about it though is that, where is it? Is it a passive? No. There's a power or something. Or was it one of these? Oh, so this exposure keystone is very much like the item power I have. But this one is more reliable, I think, because it's guaranteed. Every time I break stealth, I drop these stun grenades. So that's good. But there is a passive, something to do with Death Trap, where it's cooldown. I think it's a legendary power. Maybe. Let's see. Rogue only. It's not one that I have. Yeah, I'm not sure what the power is, but it's something that like resets the cooldown of your ultimate skill. Yeah. Anyways, and then yeah, I was watching a interesting video as
How
Destiny.
bipolarism played it.
Excuse me. Watching Ben Shapiro and Lex Friedman. Lex Friedman, I find as an interesting character because he has all sorts of intellectuals and whatnot, and various types of people on his show. Not just obviously intellectuals, but you know, musicians, artists, and etc. I mean, hell, even Destiny's been on there. It was an interesting one, especially when Lex Friedman starts grilling people on things. I think is really important. Not that he's doing it necessarily out of spite, although I do think that in the Lex Friedman conversation with Destiny, it was this, so what was it, yesterday? I don't remember if I did it on stream or not. I was listening to a video where, it was yesterday or the day before, this Corinthos guy was grilling Destiny because, oh, he's responsible for this or that or whatever. You should be taking the higher moral ground and never push back against people when they say dumb shit to you that's deserving of, like... Right? It's kind of similar, like, oh, if somebody pushes you, you shouldn't hit them in self-defense or something like that, right? But I'm of the opinion that typically people should be taking the moral high ground. What a person actually thinks is the moral high ground, obviously, there's a distinction there, what people view that as. However, when people push you, when people bully you, when people try and do things to hurt you, etc., or whatever, typically I would say it depends on the circumstance, but in most circumstances, you should be pushing back. Like, you should be calling them out on their bullshit, essentially, right? And if somebody is willing to hand out some kind of criticism and whatnot, or vitriol, whatever the nature of it is, of the thing is, then they should be willing to take it as well. But a large amount of people, I don't know the exact number, I'm not going to speculate on that, but lots of people actually can't take that. It's kind of like a fragile ego thing or something, right? Where they can't take any kind of criticism. Or at least not criticism that goes against them, and especially not as some form of like maybe retribution or pushback against something that they're doing or saying. Yeah. Anyways, here it is. It's an interesting conversation. Destiny listening to Ben Shapiro talk to Lex Friedman about various things.
And the kind of stuff that Ye was saying.
This is true. That was a good observation. Is he truly just an anti-Semitic hateful person, or is it mental illness? Well, if he was just an anti-Semitic hateful person, so you won't be debating Fuentes on No Jumper. They're telling me it's a liberal versus illiberal battle. And it seems like that's even true today. Every time people talk about Nazi Germany, they always say, oh, it's not true that the Nazis and the communists worked together. The Nazis killed the communists. Everybody says that, okay? But the timeline is important.
Do you ever sit back,
Dumb.
you know, in the quiet of your own mind and think, am I participating in evil?
I mean, so you're getting it wrong. If anything that I or anyone else in mainstream politics says drives you to violence, you're getting it wrong. You're getting it wrong. And the basic...
That was really tricky. That was a cute little trick. Did anybody see the trick? Did anybody see the trick that Ben just played there? That was super cute.
Let's start with a difficult topic. What do you think about the comments made by Ye, formerly known as Kanye West, about Jewish people?
They're awful and anti-Semitic, and they seem to get worse over time. They started off with the bizarre death.
God, do you think...
All right. I will, anybody that's maybe new watching my videos, I will be pausing whatever is on YouTube to listen to what's going on in game. When it's dialogue, anyway. Have you found your things?
Haven't even gone in yet. We have an intruder.
Ooh. Oh, yeah.
It's not like that. She's but a child.
You brought a child? Here?
It was she who brought me, actually.
Open space right here.
Yeah. No, let's do it. He's already passed out or just going to bed?
He's just being. I just put him to bed.
Oh.
You guys want to go say goodnight?
Watch where you swing that staff. It's not a toy.
What?
Who is he?
What? You just came in.
He once lived
He
in
just wants
this
attention.
vault, the one you're trespassing in. Explain yourself.
I'm a student, conducting research on the Haradrim. What's left of you all, anyway?
A student, huh?
Come on, Yara.
You have a teacher? Don't tell me Lorath has taken another apprentice.
I don't need a teacher to study. Lilith threatens Sanctuary as we speak. I need to prepare for that. With or without help.
You? Against Lilith? Well, I came to get my things. I pray they were free from your meddling.
The Haradrim, bunch of grumpy old men. Don't touch my stuff, okay?
I used to be like that girl. Had more dreams than I knew what to do with.
Oh my god, what is this lag?
Let me unseal this. Chakit. Chespit Hilm. The stone will need to be attuned to Lilith before Lorath marches up to her. It won't hold her well otherwise. I put together some notes on the process before I left. The old workshop. Lorath, Elias, and I would spend days on end cooped up in here, experimenting, debating. Nothing to hold us back but our own imaginations, and how much of each other we could tolerate.
Forgive my familiarity as I write. Harsh words better tell the tale of hard times. Maybe the end of those times nears. Our leader, the Archangel Tyrael, led us to this vault before setting off on a task of his own. He's entrusted me to lead in his place. The rebirth of the Haradric Order is up to the few of us who remain.
There were indeed very few of them left. Books covered with meticulous notes, scrolls featuring lengthy alchemical formulae. Somehow you get the sense that everything is half finished, one project after another abandoned in search of a new discovery. Oh, who's this? Hey, Sick Wicked! It's going good, dude! I don't know how many hours I got in this. You'd have to total up my streams or whatever for it, plus some off-stream gaming. Like, I played for probably 3-4 hours today or something. But lots and lots, and it's going real good. There's a few hiccups here and there, but regarding some various things in the game, but otherwise it's pretty good. I've not gotten bored yet. How are you doing, man? Thanks, man. How about you? Are you playing it? Or are you not into Diablo? I can't remember if you said you were or not. Oh, okay. Alright, I think I saw you playing that on Discord there. Street Fighter.
First things first, Lorath will need my notes.
It's good, man.
Stone magic is treacherous, even in the most skilled hands.
As long as you're having fun with what you're doing, that's the important thing. I'll tell you something crazy, though. I just found out a little while ago. There was some dude, I'm assuming it was a Chinese person. They paid literally around 1,000 USD for a level 60 ring in Diablo 4. Max level is 100, so it's not even like a max item, and they paid $1,000 for it. It's crazy. I know,
Tread
right?
carefully.
Now
There's
that,
some
to be
of the
fair,
spirit in here.
it
Right
was
amok.
not through
Murat
like
assured
any
me that he
official
banished
means
it
that
for
they
good,
bought
but
that.
I've always had my doubts.
It was they bought it on some Chinese website or whatever. Now, if it was like the fucking Diablo 3 era when they tried to bring in the real money auction house, yeah, you could find shit for that price potentially on there. But yeah, it's unofficial stuff for anybody that's listening. Wait, how does this work again? Critical strikes with poison imbued skills. Okay, so it's critical strikes. Wait, what am I supposed to do? Bring Donan to his desks. Okie doke.
Damn spiders. Always find a way in.
Jesus, get back here, you little bastard. Frickin' spiders.
I need more time.
There we go.
Lilith
Get over here,
hails
Donan.
from her father's domain. Hatred. That's the essence Lorath will need for the attunement. I kept a map. Somewhere. Here. All the places Mephisto's hatred yet lingers. There's just one last thing.
Alrighty, let's go, Donan. Get your fat ass over here. Holy crap. What, did you get stuck in the door? Holy shit, man. Is that your Herodic amulet on the table?
Yes. I bet Lorath still wears his. The Order's mission was his lifeblood. I couldn't give up my life for it. Not like him. I wanted to be a man. I left to chase family, fellowship, glory. And for what? You saw how that ended. My son. I can't do it. It wouldn't work anyway.
Donan.
You don't understand. The stuff soul stones are made of, they're old as the eternal conflict itself. With magic so primordial, you need faith.
You
need
too, dude.
spirit.
Thanks for stopping by to say hi with Sick
have
Wicked.
none.
Have a good night's sleep,
What you
and
lack in
hopefully,
faith,
tomorrow
you
work
have
doesn't
in allies.
take you out as much. I'll be streaming sometime tomorrow, so
You
probably till sometime late into the night
Yes.
if you want to join me again, or if you can.
You're the only one who can help us.
Yeah, have a good one, dude.
Unfortunately, you may be right. I can't make any promises. Really. But I can try. For you two, I'll try. Let's hear what the old man has to say.
Is Mason still awake?
He's in bed.
Okay, I'll be right back, everybody. Okay, I'm back. Had to go say goodnight to my nephew and whatnot. Okay. Well, that was very nice of my buddy here, Sick Wicked, to stop in for a few minutes. Despite his hard day at work, come say hi. I really appreciate that. I hope he's doing alright and has a good snooze and all that. We're gonna get back to the conversation. I think I'm gonna be talking to somebody else in game here real quick, so I'll deal with that first before turning the Lex Friedman thing back on. Narelle, what have you been up to?
This place is a treasure trove. Look at this masterpiece. Kalha's beyond the veil of the southern jungles.
You're familiar with Kalha's work?
She's brilliant. One of my favorites.
Mine as well.
Have you read her treatises? Never mind. You can tell me on the road.
On the road?
I'm going to help you. I know the Haradrim's ways, your magic, even that coded writing system you use. And don't tell me it's too dangerous. Lilith took my mother. I'll do whatever it takes to stop her.
That's a good speech. Might even convince the man you should be telling it to. Come on. I'm headed to him.
But your Haradrim, isn't this your vault?
It was once. Now, I suppose time will tell.
Indeed. Meet with your allies at the Forsaken Chapel. Alright, well, for now, turn this back.
I wonder if Ben Shapiro would have been further right if he wasn't Jewish. It's kind of interesting that, like, being Jewish kind of pegs you to, you can only go so far right, because then you become self-destructive, right? Because of the whole, like, cultural Bolshevism, the anti-Semitism, like that kind of shit. It's interesting.
Con 3 tweet, and then they went into even more stereotypical garbage about Jews and Jews being sexual manipulators. I think that was the Pete Davidson, Kim Kardashian stuff, and then Jews running all of the media, Jews being in charge of the financial sector, Jewish people. I mean, I called it on my show, there's Sherman Nazism, and it is. I mean, it's like right from Protocols of the Elders of Zion type stuff.
Do you think those words come from pain? Where do they come from?
And, you know, it's always hard to try and read somebody's mind. I mean, what he looks like to me, just having experience in my own family with people who are bipolar, is he seems like a bipolar personality. He seems like somebody who is in the middle of a manic episode, and when you're manic, you tend to say a lot of things that you shouldn't say, and you tend to believe that they're the most brilliant things ever said.
True.
The Washington Post did an entire piece speculating about how bipolarism played into the kind of stuff that Ye was saying, and it's hard for me to think that it's not playing into it, especially because even if he is an anti-Semite, and I have no reason to suspect he's not, given all of his comments, if he had an ounce of common sense...
Soulstones are no trifle.
There's the Donan I remember.
I need air.
I'm still muddy on the details of this plan.
The bones are there. Lilith aims to take Mephisto's power for herself. Before she can reach him, we use the Soul Stone on her.
Preparing the stone will take time we don't have. Why don't we fight her?
Who among us? You. Her corrupted blood still runs in your veins. No. Fighting her kind is always a last resort. Even if you could defeat her, she'd eventually come back. But a smarter weapon, the stone, would be up to the challenge.
Soul stones usually fail. Given enough time, it might not work.
You can make it work. There's no one I trust more to do it.
The wind is picking up. I can't see her. Thaisa!
I'll find her.
What is going on here? Oh shit, it's Elias. Finishing the ritual,
You're
I guess.
fumbling in the eye. Let me write to your little cap.
You! If you hurt her...
Hurt her! I elevated her! The runes inked into her skin form a waypoint. She is a beacon across realms!
Get her out of here!
It matters not. Her part is done. Your part is done too. Savor your breath while it lasts.
Well, damn. Oh, who's this? Oh shit.
I need more time. Time to do that.
Okay, that was way too easy. What the shit? Figured there'd be more to it than that? What the fuck? Not that crazy.
Hell of a storm.
What happened out there?
I wrecked Pandagirl.
Bloody hell. You finished the ritual from the volcano then?
Elias. That's the man who summoned Lilith. You're saying he summoned a lesser evil too?
Keep up, girl. Is Pandagirl gone?
Yes,
And Elias,
he fled.
before going to the steps, Elias came to Hawazar, took something that wasn't his. It's why I'm hunting him. I have a friend in Hawazar who has mastered the art of immortality. She might know his secret. Let me take you to her.
I thought we were after Lilith, not Elias.
Finding him may lead to her.
And while we look for him, you'll have time to work on the stone. That's what you wanted, isn't it?
Ah, damn it, I'll bite. On one of those rare occasions you gave me good advice. You said the answers you need are often in the place you least want to look.
It was you who said that.
Ah, you're right. Let's get the horses ready.
Listen, I didn't mention it earlier, but you did well. You stood against Pandagirl, a lesser evil, and lived. That's no ordinary feat. But don't let it go to your head. The arrogance and foolhardy never last long in Hawazar. I wonder what old Deckard Cain would have written in his chronicles if he had seen us. Two old friends reunited. New allies eager to learn from our vast knowledge. bound as one against the encroaching darkness, like the Haradrim of old. They were probably lost and bitter, just like us. But Cain had a gift for seeing the good in people. One thing was certain, at least. Lilith meant to devour Mephisto and claim his power as her own. Had that been her goal all along? Not sanctuary, but a bid to reign in hell. And Elias, the damned fool, was too blind to see it. Perhaps we weren't perfect, but we knew we had to make a stand. We were the world's only hope.
Bam! Ooh, level 52. Wait, why didn't I get a... Oh, there we go. Okay, let's see what we got here. Can I click this? What is this? Okay, so this is a legendary node? Port attachment gate. Where's the... This one I could probably go for. I need... How much strength? Let's see. It's 42 strength, so... Oh, look, there's some intelligence as well. So I could come down here. That's another 5. 10. 15. Yes. 5. 10. 15, 20, 27, 33, 27, 30, 34. Yeah, I'm short still. Okay, so I'd have to basically get like all these strength nodes to qualify for this. Oh, for that. Oh, I can see what all the... Oh, interesting. I should tell you what the general... I guess what the... That's pretty good. This legendary node. Cheap shot. Deadly ambush. You deal 23% increased critical strike damage to enemies affected by your trap skills. That's pretty good. That would actually work really well with this. Critical strikes, yeah. Anyways. Where am I off to next? Zarbinzet. Alright.
So you would stop at a certain point, and bipolarism tends to drive you well past the point where common sense applies. So, I mean, I would imagine it's coming from that. I mean,
For what, man? I wonder if has Benny been changing recently? I feel like I used to watch some of his shows. He said so much off-the-wall shit. This is true. That was a good observation. That, like, is he truly just an anti-Semitic hateful person, or is it mental illness? Well, if he was just an anti-Semitic hateful person, he'd be a little smarter about it, right? Like, you're not gonna go on tweeting some wild shit or saying some wild shit constantly off the wall. That's insanely stupid, right? So it seems to be like there's something else at play here, right? Like some kind of mental illness.
From his comments, I would also imagine that he's doing the logical mistake that a lot of anti-Semites or racists or bigots do, which is, somebody hurt me, that person is a Jew, therefore all Jews are bad. And that jump from a person did something to me I don't like, who's a member of a particular race or class, and therefore everybody of that race or class is bad. I mean, that's textbook bigotry, and that's pretty obviously what Ye's engaging in here.
So jumping from the individual to the group.
That's the way he's been expressing it, right? He keeps talking about his Jewish agents, and I watched your interview with him, and he kept saying, so just name the agents, right? Just name the people who are screwing you. And he wouldn't do it. Instead, he just kept going back to the general, the group, the Jews in general. I mean, that's textbook bigotry. And if it were put in any other context, he would probably recognize it as such.
To the degree his words fuel hate in the world, what's the way to reverse that process? What's the way to alleviate the hate?
I mean, when it comes to alleviating the kind of stuff that he's saying, obviously debunking it, you know, making clear that what he's saying is garbage. But the reality is that I think that for
I need time
most
to do
people who are in any way engaged with these issues, I don't think they're being convinced to be anti-Semitic by Ye. I mean, I think that there's a group of people who may be swayed that anti-Semitism is acceptable because Ye is saying what he's saying, and he's saying so very loudly, and he's saying it over and over. But yeah, I think that, for example, there were these signs that were popping up in Los Angeles saying Ye is right. Well, that group's been out there posting anti-Semitic signs on the freeways for years. There are groups.
That is true, but again, I would say that if I was Jewish right now, I've gotten emails from Jewish fans, and then the two guys from the Mossad that email me all the time. That's not anything weird though. They've like been contacting me for a long time. They just give me like suggestions on content, and then sometimes they donate a lot. But there's like nothing really. But I get a lot of like emails. I've been looking at like the general temperature of how we talk about Jewish people between like Kyrie, between fucking Ye. There's like this weirdly, because a lot of it is coming from like black community people, it seems a lot harder to address head on. Like if a white guy comes out and he's anti-Semitic, it's very easy to just like shout him down and crush him. But for the black community stuff, it seems a little bit harder to deal with. It seems to be a little harder to deal with. Not to say that they're not trying, right? Obviously Kyrie got into big trouble. Yeah, he's gotten into huge trouble. But yeah, it's an interesting, interesting dynamic.
Like that, posting anti-Semitic signs where I live in Florida. They've been doing that for years, well before Ye was saying this sort of stuff. It's just like the latest opportunity to kind of jump on that particular bandwagon. But listen, I think that people do have a moral duty to call that stuff out.
So there is a degree to which it normalizes that kind.
So you want me debating Fuentes on No Jumper? They're telling me that he's giving them the runaround. He's not being like 100% forthcoming on what's going on. I don't know what the actual truth is of that. That's just what I've heard.
I heard maybe Nick Fuentes is bailing on the Destiny debate because he's so busy with his Kanye stuff, and maybe he is like kind of worried that the Destiny debate might be like bad PR for him at this very critical juncture in his life.
But my guess is going to be is that like if he's trying to like get in with like Trump or trying to do shit like that,
I need more time.
he probably doesn't want to be.
I won't forget this.
He probably debate with me. That'd be my guess. I mean, I understand him wanting to die.
Kind of idea that Jews control the media, Jews control X institution. Is there a way to talk about a high representation of a group like Jewish people in a certain institution like the media or Hollywood and so on without it being a hateful conversation?
Sure, of course. A high percentage of higher than statistically represented in the population percentage
Pretending to study with him was useful to me.
Friends, did he tell you that? If he thinks so, you should ask him what happened. I don't care anymore. I'm starting to think taking you on this journey was a mistake.
We must break his hold on immortality. He cannot continue to escape his judgment.
Yes, and without Elias we may have more success against Lilith. Where do we start?
Seek out Timoe in the marshes. She traded with the power in the swamp and received long life. She may have the answer to killing Elias for good.
Neyrel and I will start looking for her.
What about Donan?
He has his hands full with the Soul Stone. A heavy burden to bear alone. Might be wise to offer him assistance.
An old acquaintance who has lived in this place for countless years. She taught me much about the swamp and its power, though that was a long time ago. She might try to turn you away. Do not let her.
I wonder if Thaisa and this Timui are supposed to be witch doctors.
It is a town at the edge of Hawazar, forever between Sanctuary's power and the swamps.
Well, of course it's a powered of Sanctuary.
Ah, is it?
What? Yeah, it is, I think. Pacified, speak with Donan. What do we got here? Where is the...
That looks worn. I can fix it. I can break that down.
Okay. Yeah, I know. Fields of Hatred. I'm not doing that quest. First things first. Well, turn that
Hollywood agents are probably Jewish. A higher percentage of lawyers generally are probably Jewish. A high percentage of accountants are probably Jewish. Also, a higher percentage of engineers are probably Asian. Like, the statistical truths are statistical truths. It doesn't necessarily mean anything about the nature of the people who are being talked about. There are a myriad of reasons why people might be disproportionately in one arena or another, ranging from the cultural to sometimes the genetic. I mean, there are certain areas of the world where people are better long-distance runners because of their genetic adaptations in those particular areas of the world. That's not racist, that's just fact. I mean, what starts to get racist is when you are attributing a bad characteristic to an entire population based on the notion that some members of that population are doing bad things.
Blessings of Ekarat be with you, child. Faith is infectious. The stronger the light in you, the brighter it shines on those around you. Bring your friends into our fold. Through fellowship and unity, our faith shall endure.
Yeah, there's a jump between. It's also possible that record label owners as a group have a kind of culture that F's over artists.
Sure.
Doesn't treat artists fairly. And it's also possible that there's a high representation of Jews in the group of people that own record labels. But it's that small but a very big leap that people take from the group that own record labels to all Jews.
For sure. And I think that one of the other issues also is that anti-Semitism is fascinating because it breaks down into so many different parts. Meaning that if you look at sort of different types of anti-Semitism, if you're a racist against black people, it's typically because you're racist based on the color of their skin. If you're racist against the Jews, you're anti-Semitic, then there are actually a few different ways that breaks down, right? You have anti-Semitism in terms of ethnicity, which is like Nazi-esque anti-Semitism. You have Jewish parentage, you have a Jewish grandparent. therefore your blood is corrupt and you are inherently going to have bad properties. Then there's sort of old school religious anti-Semitism, which is that the Jews are the killers
Come on,
of Christ,
Diablo,
or the
get
Jews
your
are the
shit
sons of pigs
together.
and monkeys, and therefore Judaism is bad, and therefore Jews are bad. And sort of, and the way that you get out of that anti-Semitism, historically speaking, is mass conversion, which most anti-Semitism for a couple thousand years actually was not ethnic. It was much more rooted in this sort of stuff, right? If a Jew converted out of the faith, then the anti-Semitism was quote unquote.
These guys are falling into the trap. Fuentes and Kanye will absolutely say they're only talking about a group of elite Jews and not Jews who are working class or even just engineers and accountants, etc. This won't be a good argument against what Fuentes and Yi are saying right now. Well, I mean, if they want to say that, then
Diablo 4, what the
if
fuck?
it's just an elite group of people, then I mean, there's elite groups of all sorts of people that will fuck you over, not just Jewish people, right? I don't think that's a good counter argument.
Quote alleviated, and then there's a sort of bizarre anti-Semitism that's political anti-Semitism, and that is members of a group that I don't like are
I think not. I have to take care of the Soul Stone. Lorith will be fine alone. Northeast of here is a Zakarum keep. We know hatred has a strong presence there. Perhaps we can use it to prepare the Soul Stone to trap Lilith. I could use your assistance, if you're able.
Hell yeah. Oh, where the fuck did he go? What the shit? Laura, where'd you go? Excuse me. Oh. Okay. Well, we're gonna head to the, I'm gonna go for a smoking moment here. Then I'm gonna head to the, stronghold up north here. Oh boy, what do I need? I've almost got the first skill point here. I only need 45 more. So, because I've already done some stuff here. I don't think... Yeah, I haven't done any other strongholds, so that's an easy 300, you know. Easy peasy. So there's 2 level 2 quests here. Okay. Okay, I'll be right back, people. Okay, I'm back.
Proportionately Jewish. Therefore, all Jews are members of this group or are predominantly represented in this group. So you'll see Nazis saying the communists are Jews. You'll see communists saying the Nazis are Jews, or you'll see communists saying that the capitalists, rather, are Jews. And so that's the weird thing about anti-Semitism. It's kind of like the Jews behind every corner. It's basically a big conspiracy theory. Unlike a lot of other forms of racism, which are not really conspiracy theory, anti-Semitism tends to be a conspiracy theory about the levers of power being controlled by a shadowy cadre of people who are getting together behind closed doors to control things.
Yeah, the most absurd illustration of anti-Semitism, just like you said, is Stalin versus Hitler over Poland, that every bad guy was a Jew. Right. It was like, so every enemy, there's a lot of different enemy groups, intellectuals, political, and so on, military, and behind any movement that is considered the enemy for the Nazis and any movement that's considered the enemy for the Soviet army are the Jews. What does the fact that Hitler took power teach you about human nature? When you look back at the history of the 20th century, what do you learn from that time?
I mean, there are a bunch of lessons to Hitler taking power. The first thing I think people ought to recognize about Hitler taking power is that the power had been centralized in the government before Hitler took it. So if you actually look at the history of Nazi Germany, the Weimar Republic had effectively collapsed.
What a voice.
The power had been centralized in the Chancellery and really under Hindenburg for a couple of years before that. And so it was only a matter of time until someone who was bad grabbed the power. And so the struggle between the Reds and the Browns in Nazism, in pre-Nazi Germany, led to this kind of up-spiraling of radical sentiments that allowed Hitler in through the front door, not through the back door. Selected.
So you think communists could have also taken power?
I mean, there's no question communists could have taken power. They were a serious force in pre-Nazi Germany.
Do you think there was an underlying current that would have led to an atrocity if the communists taken power?
It wouldn't have been quite the same atrocity, but obviously the communists in Soviet Russia at exactly this time were committing the Holodomor.
Yeah.
Right. So it was there were very few good guys in terms of good parties. The moderate.
Okay. I feel like Ben Shapiro is super ideologically driven to this situation. It feels like he's like classical liberalism always good, collectivism always bad. Hitler equals bad, so Hitler must have gotten to be a collectivist. I don't like this argument of like, well, because they were such a collectivist government and they socialized everything and there was so much centralized power that like Hitler, that's the reason why he came. Anybody can do it. My understanding is that when Hitler took power, it wasn't until 2 months later that the Enabling Act actually passed, which is what actually allowed them to say f everything from Parliament, right? Hitler, I think, came in on, it was in January of 33, and the Enabling Act was in March. And I think that passing that act was the huge thing that allowed him to say, fuck everything from Parliament.
I would say in regard to this, that it was, like, yeah, it was that time when Hitler did that, but that's probably what his plan was to begin with. You know what I mean? Like, once he got in there, etc., once the Nazi Party got in there, that was, it took them some time through, because they had to go through the parliamentary system to implement it to begin with. So like it's not something that probably they would have went in there and thought of after the fact. It's probably something that they had on the cooking on the books beforehand to begin with, which I think changes things a bit.
That enabled him to I guess like move through and everything. I guess like the reason why I don't like his take as much, I mean, I'm sure there maybe leading up to that, maybe there was some kind of like centralization of power. But this is an interesting thing that Pisco posed to me that's true. There are quasi-democratic ways that you can get to a fascist regime. And I think it's important to recognize that. Now, I'll be nice to Ben, and that Ben isn't the biggest like fucking Trump sucker that every other fucking conservative is in the world. Although Ben has gotten worse on it. But there are democratic ways that Trump or the Republican Party could get to what is effectively like a coup d'etat of the government, what is effectively like a fascist regime. You can do that. I would just, if you actually care, you should be aware of that. you don't need like communism, or you don't need like a collectivist government to get there. It could be something as simple as asking the vice president of the United States to throw away the votes and redo like what the election is for you. Or it could be, you know, trying to mass disenfranchise voters, or et cetera, et cetera. There are democratic ways to get there. That's always important to recognize.
Parties were being dragged by the radicals into alliance with them to prevent the worst case scenario from the other guy, right? So if you look at, I'm sort of fascinated by the history of this period, because it really does speak to how does a democracy break down. I mean, the 20s Weimar Republic was a very liberal democracy. How does a liberal democracy break down into complete fascism and then into genocide? And there's a character who, you know, was very prominent in the history of that time, named Franz von Papen, who was actually the second to last chancellor of the Republic before Hitler. So he was the chancellor, and then he handed over to Schleicher, and then Schleicher ended up collapsing, and that ended up handing power over to Hitler. It was Papen who had stumped for Hitler to become chancellor. Papen was a Catholic Democrat. He didn't like Hitler. He thought that Hitler was a radical and a nut job. But he also thought that Hitler, being a buffoon as he saw it, was going to essentially be usable by the right forces in order to prevent the communists from taking power, maybe in order to restore some sort of legitimacy to the regime because he was popular, in order for Papen to retain power himself. And then immediately after Hitler taking power, Hitler basically kills all of Papen's friends. Papen, out of quote-unquote loyalty, stays on. He ends up helping the Anschluss in Austria. Now, all this stuff is really interesting. I
think when it came to like the commies and the Nazis kind of working together in a lot of the pre-Nazi Germany history, which they did, by the way, I think this was like the general feeling was that the Nazi Party isn't actually going to. They're not actually going to take over. Like Hitler's not actually going to. I don't think anybody thought that they were as serious a threat as they actually were. I think that's like a pretty common theme throughout the Nazis coming into power, pre-Hitler gaining so much power in the government.
Mainly because what it speaks to is the great lie we tell ourselves that people who are evil are not like us. They're a class apart. People who do evil things, people who support evil people, they're not like us. That's an easy call. Everybody in history who has sinned is a person who's very different from me. Robert George, the philosopher over at Princeton, he's fond of doing a sort of thought experiment.
It was more a liberal versus communist battle. The Nazis were seen as a tool, was my understanding. It's a liberal versus illiberal battle. It seems like that's even true today. That I call it establishment versus anti-establishment, but really it's liberalism, capital L, versus illiberal people, right? It's communists and socialists and Nazis and far-right people that are all fighting against like the liberal establishment. And I think largely that's what it was leading up to Nazi Germany as well. That you had like your social liberal government and the what were they? The KDP and the Nazi parties. I think they had a different name before that though. But like these, basically, it was like everybody that was kind of anti-liberal or illiberal was fighting against like the liberal establishment. And if they could work together to do it, they would work together to do it. But I think that was the trend in pre-Nazi Germany, basically. And I think you kind of see that even today. That's in a way, that's where some of the horseshoe comes from. There's a lot of alignment between far-right people and far-left people on issues like, how do we deal with China? What should we be doing in Ukraine? Do we trust anybody in the government? How do we feel about mandatory vaccines? Like stuff like this. You see a lot of alignment on these like far figures on both sides.
Fitness classes where he asks people to raise their hand if they had lived in Alabama in 1861. How many of you would be abolitionists? And everybody raises their hand.
The communists were fighting brown shirts in the streets, though. They definitely were opposed to the Nazis. Okay. People keep giving this example of people keep giving this example that every time people talk about Nazi Germany, they always say, it's not true that the Nazis and the communists worked together. The Nazis killed the communists. Everybody says that, okay? The timeline is important. Communists and the Nazis absolutely worked together up until the Nazis had power. Then once Hitler's influence grew, then he killed the communists.
I'm not ready yet.
You don't get to say, well, no, they never worked together. Hitler killed the communists. That was after the communists and the Nazis kind of worked together to like overthrow the liberal Nazis. That's what happened. Like the timeline is important. Okay? Like
I need more time.
Like Hitler's not a great guy because Hitler killed Hitler. Because Hitler only killed Hitler after he did all the horrible things that he did, right? It doesn't work that way.
He says, of course that's not true. Of course that's not true. The best protection against evil is recognizing that it lies in every human heart and the possibility that it takes you over. And so you have to be very cautious in how you approach these issues and the back and forth of politics, the sort of bipolarity of politics, polarization in politics might be a better way to put it, makes it very easy.
In what ways did the commies and fascists work together? Was it their way to destroy liberalism?
I think I was arguing this in Rosh's subreddit, but like there were a couple of elections where they supported each other in different places. I'd have to go back and look it up particularly, but yeah, I mean there were times when they were like both of them essentially. There were also times when they fought too, but like I think in general, leading up to the pre-Nazi Germany, there was this fomenting of this hatred of liberalism coming from commies and Nazis. Commies and Nazis fought a little bit, but I think generally they wanted to topple the liberal regime. That's essentially what was going on. But I would have to go back and look at the specific examples, or I might have like typed them out when I was arguing with Bosch and stuff. I don't know if they banned me before or after that, but
easy to kind of fall into the rock'em sock'em robots that eventually could theoretically allow.
This referendum might have been one of the things. This is a referendum to dissolve the Prussian Landtag or Parliament, held on the initiative of Der Stahlheim's ex-servicemen's organization for the Nazi Party and the German Communist Party. The referendum was held on the 9th of August, 1931, and required 13.2 million votes to succeed, but they only got 9.8 million votes. There were a few things like this going on where Nazis and commies were voting together or working together to try to like topple the liberal regime. Yeah, and the KPD refused to ever work with the SPD. They never wanted to work with them because they were the enemy. They were liberals.
How you support somebody who's truly frightening and hideous in order to stop somebody who you think is more frightening and hideous. And it's this kind of language, by the way, now predominating almost all over the Western world, right? My political enemy is an enemy of democracy. My political enemy is going to end the republic. My political enemy is going to be the person who destroys the country we live in. And so that person has to be stopped by any means necessary. And that's dangerous stuff.
So the communists had to be stopped in Nazi Germany, and so they're the devil, and so any useful buffoon, as long as they're effective against the communists, would do. Do you ever wonder, because the people that are participating in evil may not understand that they're doing evil, do you ever sit back, in the quiet of your own mind and think, am I participating in evil?
I mean, so my business partner and I, one of our favorite memes is from... There's a British comedy show, the name escapes me, of these two guys who are members of the SS, and they're dressed in the SS uniforms, have the black uniforms, the skulls on them, and they're saying to each other. One says to the other guy, you notice that the British, the symbol is something nice, and it's like an eagle, but it's a skull and crossbones. You see the Americans, you see their blue uniforms, they're very nice and pretty. Ours are jet black. Are we the baddies? And that's it.
Yeah, it's Michelin Webb is the sketch.
And the truth is, we look back at the Nazis and we say, well, of course they were the baddies. They wore black uniforms, and they had jackboots, and they had this and that. And of course they were the bad guys. But evil rarely presents its face so clearly. So yeah, I mean, I think that you have to constantly be thinking along those lines, and hopefully you try to avoid it. You can only do the best that a human being can do. But yeah, I mean, the answer is yes. I would say that I spend an inordinate amount of time reflecting on whether I'm doing the right thing. And I may not always do the right thing. I'm sure a lot of people think that I'm doing the wrong thing on a daily basis. But it's definitely a question that has to enter your mind as a historically aware and hopefully morally decent person.
Do you think you're mentally strong enough if you realize that you're on the wrong side of history to switch sides? Very few people in history seem to be strong enough to do that.
I mean, I think that the answer, I hope, would be yes. You never know until the time comes, and you have to do it. I will say that having heterodox opinions in a wide variety of areas is something that I have done before. I'm the only person I've ever heard of in public life who actually has a list on their website of all the dumb, stupid things I've ever said. So where I go through and I either say, this is why I still believe this, or this is why what I said was terrible and stupid. And I'm sure that list will get a lot longer.
Yeah, look forward to new additions to that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it actually is a super, super long list. People should check it out. And it's quite honest and raw. What do you think about, it's interesting to ask you, given how pro-life you are, about Ye's comments about comparing the Holocaust to the 900,000 abortions.
Like says, listening in on a long run. Thank you for the detailed breakdown. If you have advice and parts on where I should have done better, let me know. Also, let me know your interesting disagreements with Ben as they come up. Gotcha, Ben.
Abortions in the United States a year.
So, I'll take this from two angles. As a pro-life person, I actually didn't find it offensive, because if you believe, as I do, that...
Ye's comments. What do you think about... It's interesting to ask you, given how pro-life you are,
Time to do that.
about Ye's comments about comparing the Holocaust to the 900,000 abortions in the United States a year.
So, I'll take this from two angles. As a pro-life person, I actually didn't find it offensive, because if you believe, as I do, that unborn and preborn lives deserve protection, then the slaughter of just under 1 million of them every year for the last almost 50 years is a historic tragedy on par with a Holocaust. From the outside perspective, I get why people would say there's a difference in how people view the preborn as to how people view, say, a 7-year-old who's being killed in the Holocaust. Like the visceral power and evil of the Nazis shoving full-grown human beings and small children into gas chambers can't be compared to a person who, even from a pro-life perspective, may not fully understand.
I need time to do that.
Hello.
Oh, hi, what's up?
What's going on, man? How have you been?
I've been okay. We're listening to this Lex and Mitch thing. What's up?
I'm not ready
do
yet.
you mind if I step in and ask you a few questions about it, actually? Is that okay, or do you want me to do another time?
Is it hyper ultra relevant to what we just listened to, or otherwise I probably do it at the end?
The past 10 minutes or so, it's kind of relevant.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't know the rules of your community.
No, I mean you can join, but yeah, good. Better be good. Otherwise, everyone's gonna fucking hate you. So good luck. Go for it. What do you got?
Oh God, the chat does hate me. No, guys, I love you. Okay, so you've been watching this video, and I'm kind of curious. How do we deal with some of the inconvenient truths that do crop up when you talk about these topics? You know, for example,
yeah, I've always said that like you just have to own stuff like that, like right off the bat. You have to own it, and then you've got to be able to speak about it. So like when somebody says some shit like, oh, like Jewish people aren't really overrepresented, yeah, of course they are. Or like, oh, black people don't commit more crime, of course they do, right? Because you have to be able to move on to the next part, which is answering, well, why do they? Why, right? That's the important part. And people seem to have a really, really, really hard time actually doing that sometimes.
So you
but yeah, I mean that's all you can do.
I guess, but it seems like kind of an unsatisfying answer, because sometimes you have to give up a lot, you know? Like if you this topic you're talking sorry, earlier in the video he was talking about Jews and accountants, right? And so for example, a lot of the Nazi writings, the political theory was about how the Jews ran the banks and how they used the money to disenfranchise the German working class, and that's kind of a lot of their political theory. The issue is that there was at least a little bit of overrepresentation, not as much as they said, but there was a little bit. And the main reason for it is because during the days of the Holy Roman Empire, Christians couldn't do certain things with their money.
Yeah,
and the same in the Ottoman Empire, they couldn't do certain things with their money.
Yeah, sure, I've heard this. Yeah, what about it?
No, it feels like, you know, you kind of have to give
that's
up.
easy, but that what you just said is just saying. Why can't you just say what you just said?
I don't know. It feels unsatisfying. I don't know why.
I mean, it's true. Why should it feel unsatisfying if it's a true thing?
I feel like if you're in the middle of a debate, it might put you on the wrong foot. It might it is true, yes, and you do have to admit it, and it's not anti-Semitic, but it seems like you're just.
I don't understand what he means. Like, what kind of wrong foot would that put you on? Like, maybe it depends on who you're talking to. Like, if you're talking to a Jew and you say that, despite it being the, like, are they going to be sensitive enough that they're going to assume you mean, well, if you say this thing, it's going to dovetail or lead into anti-Semitism? Do they equate, does that individual or group of people you're talking to equate it with that thing regardless? Even if you just say, yeah, well, this is why there was, say, an overrepresentation of a certain group of people doing this or that. But it has nothing to do with anti-Semitism? Or whatever group of people you're talking about. Like, I mean, it is what it is. It might be unsatisfying if you say that and then somebody says, oh, well, you're just, that's anti-Semitic. It's like, no, I never said that. I would say it would be an issue if somebody says, well, here's how they're overrepresentative, and then there's some idiotic thing that they say afterwards, and this is why there's a conspiracy for them to control everybody, or they're trying to take over the world, or some retarded thing like that, right? That's when you go, okay, yeah, you need to take a step back, right? Like, push back, because it's like, but if somebody does that, and maybe you could say then there could be an issue of if such people who would say something like that use that as an example, like, oh, there's an over-representation here, therefore it's this thing that's bad, like from everybody else's perspective, like everybody's like, it's bad to say that because it's not true or whatever, but they say it anyway because they think that it's true. Then maybe you could say, maybe this would be something like what Destiny calls a dog whistle, right? Where like you ask the question, well, if you think there's an over-representation here, does it lead to here? And I would say, well, that's when you got to ask the person, what do you think that leads to? What's the point of that, right? Because it always comes down to, well, what's the reason for the over-representation? I mean, as far as I know, Jews are very high achievers in many aspects, many intellectual fields, etc. in the world, money, science, etc. So he just said that, yeah, that's all that means. It's like they're drawn to over-accomplish or accomplish much on an individual and group level. Like, that's fine. Now, the problem there would be if the person then, again, went on to point out, well, but that's how they're trying to control the world or some shit, right? Like, yeah. I think that's satisfying enough. It's, do you think, does the person take the next step of saying they're responsible for bad things because they're Jews or something stupid like that? Like, do they take that step? If not, then, like, you can't do anything if they don't say that, I guess you could say, right? Like, if it's full stop, yeah, there's just this over-representation, and this is why I think it is, and it's because they're really good at these things, and that's not anti-Semitic, right? I don't see how anything like that, it shouldn't be taken as anti-whatever, okay? Or racist or whatever. But the other side of the coin is, does the person who's asking the question of why do you think there's an overrepresentation, maybe they're trying to bait you, and regardless what you say, they're going to jump to the conclusion that you're an anti-Semite. Maybe they're going to assume that you have the position that's the extreme after the fact, like after the truth of whatever that thing is, right? Like, maybe they're going to jump to some illogical or logical conclusion, regardless whether you agree with it or not. You could get painted as that thing. And maybe that's what he's trying to work out, is how do I get around that? But not have that happen. But good luck, man. People are people.
You immediately give them so much ground when you have a conversation like that.
I mean, it's not just because, I mean, there's a million different ways you can go. I mean, one is you can ask, well, why is somebody overrepresented in an area? Like, that's a valid question to ask. But a second thing is, even if somebody is overrepresented, does that, like, mean you should Holocaust them?
Well, no, obviously not.
Yeah, so I mean, like, there's a ton of different ways you can go with that argument. You don't have to, yeah, it doesn't, it's not like, oh God, like, Jews were overrepresented in banking, I lose, they're right, like, we should Holocaust them all. Right?
I'm
like,
not ready yet.
There's still tons of ways you can go with the next conversation. But if you refuse to acknowledge like things that are factually true, then nobody's going to believe anything you have to say, because now it's going to look like you're just being a partisan hack, and no one's going to take you seriously.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. You just have to own it.
Okay.
All right. Yep. Sorry, man. See ya.
And the consequences of their own decisions, or from a pro-choice perspective, fully understands the consequences, but just doesn't think that that person is a person. That's actually different. So I understand both sides of it. I wasn't offended by Ye's comments in that way, though, because if you're a pro-life human being, then you do think that what's happening is a great tragedy on scale that involves the dehumanization of an entire class of people, the preborn.
So philosophically, you understand the comparison.
I do. Sure.
So in his comments, in the jumping from the individual to the group, I'd like to ask you, you're one of the most effective people in the world at attacking the left. And sometimes it can slip into attacking the group. Do you worry that that's the same kind of oversimplification that EA is doing about Jewish people that you can sometimes do with the left as a group?
So when I speak about the left, I'm speaking about a philosophy. I'm not really speaking about individual human beings as the leftists group and then try to name who the members of this individual group are. I also make a distinction between the left and liberals. There are a lot of people who are liberal who disagree with me on taxes, disagree with me on policy, disagree with me on a lot of things. The people who I'm talking about generally when I talk about the left in the United States are people who believe that alternative points of view ought to be silenced because they are damaging and harmful simply based on the disagreement. So that's one distinction. The second distinction, again, is when I talk about the right versus the left, typically I'm talking about a battle of competing philosophies. And so I'm not speaking about typically... It would be hard to... If you put a person in front of me and said, is this person of the left or of the right? Having just met them, I wouldn't be able to label them in the same way that if you met somebody in the name of Greenstein, you'd immediately got Jew. Or you met a black person, black person. And
well, if they have blue hair.
The adherence to a philosophy makes you a member of a group. If I think the philosophy is bad, that doesn't necessarily mean that you as a person are bad, but it does mean that I think your philosophy is bad.
Yeah, so the grouping is based on the philosophy versus something like a race, like the color of your skin, or race as in the case of the Jewish people. So it's a different thing. You can be a little bit more nonchalant and careless in attacking a group because it's ultimately attacking a set of ideas.
Well,
right?
I mean, it's really nonchalant in attacking the set of ideas, and I don't know that nonchalant would be the way I put it. I tried to be exact when you don't always hit, but if I say that I oppose the communists, right, and then presumably I'm speaking of people who believe in the communist philosophy. Now, the question is whether I'm mislabeling, right? Whether I'm taking someone who's not actually a communist and then shoving them in that group of communists, right? That would be inaccurate.
The dangerous thing is it expands the group, as opposed to you talking about the philosophy. You're throwing everybody who's ever said, I'm curious about communism, I'm curious about socialism, because there's like a gradient. It's like to throw something at you. I think Joe Biden said MAGA Republicans, right?
Right.
I think that's a very careless statement, because the thing you jump to immediately is like all
everyone who voted for Trump.
For Trump.
Right.
Versus, I think, in the charitable interpretation, that means a set of ideas.
Yeah, my actually problem with the MAGA Republicans line from Biden is that he went on
what
the
the hell?
speech that he made in front of the Defense Hall to actually try and define what it meant to be a MAGA Republican who was a threat to the Republic, was the kind of language that he was using. And later on in the speech, he actually suggested, well, there are moderate Republicans, and the moderate Republicans are people who agree with me on the Inflation Reduction Act. It's like, well, that can't be the dividing line between a MAGA Republican and a moderate.
I'd have to go back and listen to that full thing, but I thought Biden was pretty clear that when he was talking about the MAGA Republicans, he was talking about election deniers. I'd have to go back and listen, but I thought Biden made that fairly clear. I don't know if he was saying earlier MAGA Republicans are just people that agree with me on the Inflation Reduction Act.
Republican, somebody who agrees with you. You got to name me like a Republican who disagrees with you fairly strenuously, but is not in this group of threats to the Republic. To make that distinction, we can have a fair discussion about whether the idea of election denial, for example, makes somebody, a threat to institutions. That's a conversation that we can have, and then we'll have to discuss how much power they have, what the actual perspective is, delve into it. But I think that he was being overbroad and sort of labeling all of his political enemies under one rubric. Now, again, in politics, this stuff sort of happens all the time. I'm not going to plead clean hands here because I'm sure that I've been inexact. But somebody who will be good in that particular situation is for somebody to sort of read me back the quote, and I'll let you know where I've been inaccurate. I'll try to do that.
And also,
let's do that. Let's check. Biden, MAGA, Republicans, Independents, Hall, speech, transcript. Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundation of a republic. I want to be very clear. Laws. Very clear up front. Not every Republican, not even the majority of Republicans, are MAGA Republicans. Not every Republican embraces their extreme ideology. And not because I've been able to work with these mainstream Republicans, but there is no question that the Republican Party today is dominated, driven, and intimidated by Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans, and that is a threat to this country. are hard things. I'm an American president. Here, in my view, is what is true. MAGA Republicans do not respect the Constitution. They do not believe in the rule of law. They do not recognize the will of the people. They refuse to accept the results of a free election, and they're working right now as I speak in state after state to give power to decide elections in America to partisans and cronies, empowering election deniers to undermine democracy itself. MAGA forces are determined to take this country backwards to an America where there's no right to choose, no right to privacy, no right to contraception, no right to marry who you love. They promote authoritarian leaders, they fan the flames of political violence, they are a threat to our personal rights, they pursue justice, the rule of law, to the very soul of this country. It's either MAGA failure to stop a peaceful transfer of power for the 2020 election in preparation for 2022, 2024. For far more Americans from every background and belief who reject the extreme MAGA ideology than those who accept it. Our Republicans embrace anger, they thrive on chaos. Democracy cannot survive. When one side believes there are only two outcomes to an election, either they win or they were cheated.
Don't shy away from humor and occasional trolling and mockery and all that kind of stuff for the fun, for the chaos.
I'm not ready yet.
I mean, you know, I try not to do trollery for trollery's sake, but, you know, if the show's not entertaining and not fun, people aren't going to listen. And so, you know, if you can't have fun with politics, the truth about politics is we all take it very seriously because it has some serious ramifications. Politics is Veep, it is not House of Cards. The general rule of politics is that everyone is a moron unless proven otherwise, that virtually everything is done out of stupidity rather than malice, and that if you actually watch politics as a comedy, you'll have a lot more fun. And so the difficulty for me is I take politics seriously, but also I have the ability to sort of flip the switch and suddenly it all becomes incredibly funny. Because it really is. If you just watch it from the pure entertainment perspective, and you put aside the fact that it affects hundreds of millions of people, then watching, you know, President Trump being president, I mean, he's one of the funniest humans who's ever lived. Watching Kamala Harris be Kamala Harris and talking about how much she loves Venn diagrams or electric buses, I mean, that's funny stuff. So if I can't make fun of that, then my job becomes pretty morose pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's funny to figure out what is the perfect balance between seeing the humor and the absurdity of the game a bit versus taking it seriously enough because it does affect hundreds of millions of people.
Genuine.
It's a weird balance to strike. It's like I am afraid with the internet that everything becomes a joke.
Bombs like landed on me.
I totally agree with this. I will say this. I try to make less jokes about the ideas and more jokes about the people in the same way that I make jokes about myself. I'm pretty self-effacing in terms of my humor. I would say at least half the jokes on my show are about me. Right, when I'm reading ads for Tommy John and they're talking about their no wedgie guarantee, I'll say things like, you know, that would help me in high school because it would have. I mean, just factually speaking. So, you know, if I can speak that way about myself, I feel like everybody else can take it as well.
Difficult question. In 2017, there was a mosque shooting in Quebec City. 6 people died, 5 others seriously injured. The 27-year-old gunman consumed a lot of content online and checked Twitter accounts a lot of a lot of people, but one of the people he checked quite a lot.
It's gone. So many years I held it at bay. Then the Crusaders came. You were all so scared. I cannot hate you for giving me to the pyre. I forgive you.
No, right on. What?
There's a Legion.
Oh, I don't care about that. No, I'm focused on getting the story and the renown. Those Legion things don't give you that much on like World Tier 2 anyways.
Well, I mean, if you do it all in one night, you can get 3 chests at the end.
What? I did it the other day and I only got 1.
Well, yeah, because you're not killing everything. You gotta kill everything.
What are you talking about? We 100%ed the event. I was there with like 12 other people.
Not just like the boss, you gotta kill everything and you got a chance when get that mount either.
Oh, I don't give a shit about that.
Yeah, I know, not just the mount, but the actual like.
Yeah, I don't think it's actually worth it that much because the event takes fucking forever. Yes, it does. It takes fucking forever to accomplish, even with like a large group of people there. It's annoying. Having to run all over the fucking place to do shit. Like, and if it comes down to like individual accountability for like how much damage etc you've done or whatever as part of it, like whether you killed something or not, does that count for you or not? And so I don't know if that's a thing or not, but like I got a single chest and I got nothing but like a fucking single yellow, some gold and like some blues and shit out of it. Like that's all I got. So I was like, okay, like I'll worry about this shit when I'm on World Tier 3 and shit. Well, I think it's just due to the fact that it's lower tier, right? Like, the lower difficulty or whatever. Yeah, so I'm not worried about doing that shit. That's why. Now I gotta come down here. Zarbin's it.
A lot of is you. 93 times in the month leading up to the shooting. If you could talk to that young man, what would you tell him? And maybe other young men listening to this.
I need you to go and follow Hassan Piker, the Young Turks, and David Pacman before you go on your show. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I hope Lex isn't listening. I'm just kidding.
That have hate in their heart in that same way. What would you tell them?
You're getting it wrong. If anything that I or anyone else in mainstream politics says drives you to violence, you're getting it wrong. You're getting it wrong. Now, again, when it comes to stuff like this, I have a hard and fast rule that I've applied evenly across the spectrum, and that is I never blame people's politics for other people committing acts of violence unless they're actively advocating violence. So when a fan of Bernie Sanders shoots up a congressional baseball game, that is not Bernie Sanders' fault. I may not like his rhetoric, I may disagree with him on everything. Bernie Sanders did not tell somebody to go shoot up a congressional baseball game. When a nutcase in San Francisco goes and hits Paul Pelosi with a hammer, I'm not going to blame Kevin McCarthy, the House Speaker, for that. When somebody threatens Brett Kavanaugh, I'm not going to suggest that was Joe Biden.
Everybody does this. Everybody does this, and I don't like it. I don't like it. I feel like I'm the only person on the internet that feels like you have a responsibility to your audience. Like, if my fans, even if when they make misogynistic jokes, like, this is why we veered so differently into how we deal with women or women's issues. If somebody that was watching me decided to go out and
See, I kind of agree with Destiny here. It's like, it's this fine line, I guess, and it's like, where does that line get drawn? 'Cause the issue is anybody could come along and say, regardless of what you personally advocate for or don't, and say, well, I watch this dude's stuff or I listen to this person, regardless of their message, it's because of them or whatever that I went and, or because they're of the somewheres of the seemingly same political association or religious association or whatever with me. I went out and I did this bad thing, and then you're to blame for it. Like, that's kind of that's a pretty shitty thing, right? Because you're now to say that, which would mean, I think, that pretty much nobody could ever say anything of import about anything, because they have to be worried that psychos or crazy people with that are deranged, etc., that go out and do these fucked up things are going to do these things. And it's like, okay, but how else are you going to talk about anything of import whatsoever, of any kind of importance or whatever? If anybody at any time could go out and just say it's your fault because they believe what you say, even though nothing you say has anything to do with violence or anything like that, right? Like, because anybody, even somebody that's trying to just stab you, like kind of fuck you over on purpose, could say, oh yeah, it's because of this person, because I listened to this person, right? So it's like, that's kind of a worse scenario, I think, right? Because otherwise everything would be milquetoast. Nobody would ever be have the courage to stand up and say anything of importance about any fucking thing in the world, and because they'd be afraid of that. Or the opposite is kind of how it is now, right? Like, you say what you gotta say or feel or think or whatever, as long as you're not explicitly telling people to go commit acts of violence and stuff like that or whatever. This is a problem specifically I have with a lot of news organizations, where they host people that, or they say idiotic things, right? Like, where regarding somebody that's of a different political affiliation, like using very strong language in terms of maybe what should be done to or with those individuals that they disagree with. I'm sure if I went on the internet, I hope that people understand what I'm trying to get at here. It's a very fine line, I suppose you could say, and generally speaking, as Western societies have come to decide that it's better to err on the side of letting people speak and put forward their beliefs, etc., and that somebody going and doing something in their name doesn't necessarily make it their fault. Again, is that person calling for some kind of something, especially violent things, to be done to an individual or a group of people, right? If not, then there's not really much you can do, because at any given time, anybody could come along and say the same thing about you. You're canceled, you're done, throw you in prison, and like that would be the extreme, right? Is that it's like, oh yeah, we're doing this for the safety of everybody, but it's still tyranny is tyranny is tyranny. You would still be tyrannized because it'd be maybe a different kind of tyranny, but it'd still be a tyranny nonetheless, where you're not allowed to express yourself. Because one out of like a million people or something like that, or something might come along and say, oh, they made me do it, or because of them I believe that I should go do this, or some shit, right? Like that's a person, when a person decides to go do something bad, regardless what they're hearing beforehand, unless the person they're hearing it from explicitly says, hey, go hurt these people or something, then the onus now is on the person responsible for committing whatever the violent acts are, right? They take it upon themselves. They don't abdicate responsibility to somebody else, per se. It's on them at that point.
Actually kill League of Legends players, I would probably stop making those jokes if that happened, okay? If somebody went and actually did it, they were like, this guy mains Yasuo, and I shot him and I killed him, and that's, you know, he memes about it all the time. I'd be like, okay, hold on.
I'm not ready yet.
We're not gonna make those types of jokes anymore, guys. Like, no, but seriously, like, I don't like this, like, oh yeah, I would never blame anybody's violent acts on a political ideology. Bro, a lot of violence, a lot of this type of violence is like expressly political in nature. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like we...
Oh,
like, this is the thing that,
that's really good.
This is the
Pieces
thing
of
that,
maximum life by
yeah, thank God
30%.
Destiny's the paragon of
Oh,
treating
I
women
like
well.
that.
I treat women
Okay,
great.
so
Just go ask your mom, okay? It's a reason why she comes home every night with a smile on her face, buddy.
Wow.
When you are an influencer, right? You get paid a ton of money because people do what you tell them to do, right? When I show a product, if I shout something out, people listen. That's why we get paid money. That's why we're called influencers, right? Because people give you money for that stuff. You can't on one hand get paid tens of thousands of dollars to promote a product and then go, well, if somebody does violence, I don't know why they did that. Like, of course, like, I think it's things we need to be mindful of that. I think you need to be mindful of that. You have to admit, though, you probably have a closer ear to your community than most others. Yeah, sure, and I'm not even saying most people have to take, like, my stance on it. Like, I can understand, I don't think you have to do as much, you don't have to be as proactive as I am. I feel a great deal of responsibility for it. I feel a lot. But,
something
if somebody were just like, yeah, you know, if I see extremist comments, I ban them, like, you know, I don't mind if somebody doesn't take the same measures as you, but at least be realistic about acknowledging what's going on, right? Like, yeah, you know, somebody might actually hear some rhetoric that I give and go out and shoot up. Somebody might do that, right? Like, I can understand, like, at least acknowledge that's a reality, and then work from there, you know.
Biden's fault, because it's not Joe Biden's fault. I mean, we can play this game all day long, and I find that the people who are most intensely focused on playing this game are people who tend to oppose the politics of the person, as opposed to actually believing sincerely that this has driven somebody into the arms of the god of violence. But, you know, I have 4.7 million Twitter followers. I have 8 million Facebook followers. I have 5 million YouTube followers. I would imagine that some of them are people who
have my sword.
are violent. I would imagine that some of them are people who do evil things or want to do evil things. And I wish that there were a wand that we could wave that would prevent those people from deliberately or mistakenly misinterpreting things as a call to violence. It's just a negative byproduct of the fact that you can reach a lot of people. And so, you know, if somebody could point me to the comment that I suppose, quote unquote, drove somebody to go and literally murder human beings, then I would appreciate it so I could.
And that's like, I don't think Ben actually believes this. I think he just doesn't want responsibility for anything. Because, like, point me to the exact comment. Well, okay, well, point me to the exact comment that got Hitler in power. Point me to the exact comment that Ye could say that would cause anti-Semitism rise. Point me to the exact comment, like, oh, well, because I feel like even for Ye, like, he could say, well, he is. Ye's like, I'm Jewish. I don't hate Jews. I'm Jewish. I can't hate Jews, right? Like, it's just such a naive reading of things. And Ben is smarter than that. I know he's smarter than this. I know he's smarter than this. I think they just don't want. What is the drive? You just don't want to acknowledge. No, they probably genuinely believe it. Actually, conservatives would say that, like, it's freedom of speech as long as you're not doing explicit calls to violence. We treat every individual as their own kind of agent that is capable of making intelligent decisions, and you don't have responsibility for somebody else doing something. I guess it's just the level of responsibility from creators is probably genuinely way higher. He probably doesn't actually believe that it's his responsibility. I think that's sad, but
so I could talk about the comment, but I don't. Mainly because I just think that if we remove agency from individuals, and we broad-scale political rhetoric for every act of violence, we're not gonna. The people who are gonna pay the price are actually the general population, because free speech will go away. If the idea is that things that we say could drive somebody who is unbalanced to go do something evil, the necessary byproduct is hate. Is that speech is a form of hate. Hate is a form of violence.
You seem to be ignorantly, unfairly biased here, not gonna lie. And the person's name, of course, is Truth Teller. What did I just say that was unfairly biased? I'm so curious. I don't think I said anything controversial. Please tell me. Literally everything. Libra just fucking.
I'm not ready
Absolutely.
Yeah, 0 examples. Don't give any examples.
Speech is a form of violence. Speech needs to be curbed. And that to me is deeply disturbing.
So definitely that 27-year-old man is the only one responsible for the evil he did.
I need more time.
But what if he and others like him are not nutcases? What if they're people with pain, with anger in their heart? What would you say to them? You are exceptionally influential, and other people like you that speak passionately about ideas. What do you think is your opportunity to alleviate the hate in their heart?
If we're speaking about people who are mentally ill and people who are just misguided, I'd say to him the thing that I said to every other young man in the country: you need to find meaning and purpose in forming connections that actually.
I also don't like to blame it on violence on being mentally ill, because, like, most mentally ill people aren't violent people. The vast majority of mentally ill people are not like mass shooters and shit, right? Like,
matter in a belief system that actually promotes.
No, but most massive shooters are mentally ill, right?
And promotes helping other people.
Or if not all.
This is why, you know, the message that I most commonly say to young men is it's time for you to grow up, mature, get a job, get married, have a family, take care of the people around you, become a useful part of your community. I've never, at any point in my entire career, suggested violence as a resort to political issues. And the whole point of having a political conversation is that it's a conversation. If I didn't think that it were worth trying to convince people of my point of view, I wouldn't do what I do for a living.
So violence doesn't solve it?
No, it doesn't.
As if this wasn't already a difficult conversation.
Uh-oh.
Let me ask about Ilhan Omar. You called out her criticism of Israel policies as anti-Semitic.
I'm not ready yet.
Is there a difference between criticizing a race of people, like the Jews, and criticizing the policies of a nation?
Of course. I criticize the policies of Israel on a fairly regular basis. I would assume from a different angle than Ilhan Omar does. But yeah, I mean, I criticize the policies of a wide variety of states. And to take an example, I mean, I've criticized Israel's policy in giving control of the Temple Mount to the Islamic Bloc, which effectively prevents anybody except for Muslims from praying up there. I've also criticized the Israeli government for the COVID crackdown, right? They can criticize the policies of any government, but that's not what Ilhan Omar does. Ilhan Omar doesn't actually believe that there should be a state of Israel. She believes that Zionism is racism and that the existence of a Jewish state in Israel is, in and of itself, the great sin. That is a statement she would make about no other people in no other land. She would not say that the French don't deserve a state for the French. She wouldn't say that Somalis wouldn't deserve a state in Somalia. She wouldn't say that Germans don't deserve a state in Germany. She wouldn't say...
I need more time.
Isn't it pretty easy for me to become a German? Like, can't I immigrate to Germany, do all the paperwork, become a German, and vote in German elections? Isn't it a little bit harder in Israel to become, like, an Israeli citizen that can vote in election? Isn't that a significantly more contrived or difficult or impossible process?
I need more time.
No, it's not that much harder. It's just super easy for Jews. I'm pretty sure it's like... So my understanding is that I think Ellen Omar clearly talked about Israel being essentially an ethnic state. Okay. Okay, let's simplify the Israeli shit as much as possible, okay? And when I say simplify, it's because I don't understand it. Okay, so the problem with Israel is, okay, go back to basically any period in time ever, okay? And Jewish people are being killed all over the world, every single place they go, okay? Everybody wants to kill Jewish people. It's the hip thing to do, gets you the most Twitter followers, makes everybody love you. Easy scapegoat for all of your problems in every part of the world, especially if you're Arabic, especially if you're Muslim, okay? Holy shit. We love killing Jews, okay? Kill Jews everywhere. They move around the world trying to figure out places to live, and eventually, post-World War II, they get a little, basically, nation-state carved out for them called Israel. Now, all the Jewish people that were persecuted all over the place all go to Israel and like, okay, cool. We have a country. Everything's chill here. People aren't trying to kill us, even though all the countries around them are still trying to kill them, and they get help from other countries that are trying to help those countries kill them. They've got, like, their Six-Day War. They're all sorts of shit. Everybody wants to kill Israel, okay? But they've got their own country. Now they're chill. They get to vote. They get to have their shit, and everything is cool. Now, there's complicated issues with Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, and these other areas that have claims to this land. But the big issue with Israel, when people are talking, when people are talking to, when people are talking about like a one-state solution, for instance, right? People say, if you're a citizen in Israel, you know, we should combine all the Arabs, combine all the Jewish people, and let them all vote. The worry that Jewish people have is that, like, okay, well, hold on. If we do a one-state solution and all these Arabic people are allowed to vote, we kind of sort of have this country so that we can get away from all of the other people trying to kill us. The worry is that if we give up our country to Arabic people or Muslims and they're now voting, that they might start voting for the same policies that we essentially escaped from every other country, right?
And I think that's a legitimate concern because, like he said, all those people, and even the people that are there that are apparently... Right, I'm gonna say supposedly because I don't know. I'm not a mind reader. They say they're or whatever, and I guess act as if they're not, let's say, bigoted towards Jews or whatever. The issue is that the religion itself of Islam, whether it's Shiite or whatever the hell the other one's called, the two halves of Islam, right, inherently are against Jews, especially Jews. Everybody else is that's not, and it's not just. Like, it's not, I think, on a racial basis per se. I think it's more on a religious basis, right? Because there's the three peoples in the books, the Muslims, the Christians, and the Jews. And Christians, maybe I'm wrong about this, but I think they get treated just as badly as Jews in many ways. But the hatred that's built into Islamic religion, to Islam itself, like that seeps out, of course, into the culture, into the way they build their societies, etc. And if you gave those people in a place that is primarily Jewish more of a voice, the problem there would be that the fear, and I think rightly so because it's happened in the past, that they would, I think Iran is a good example of that. It was a westernized, like, Middle Eastern country back in, I think, by the 70s, but then it got taken over by Islam due to political voting, right? So they overturned that system of Western democracy and reinstated Sharia law and all this crazy shit. And you know, I think the first thing those people would be doing is probably enslaving or because the people who would come in, I think that's the issue, is the people who would come in would be those who you would not want there to begin with. And they could say or do whatever they wanted beforehand regarding like what they believe, but like I've said before, you know, people can say whatever they want. You got to watch how they actually behave to judge what are their motives, what do they actually believe in, etc. Okay? And this is not the first time. This is not a thing that, it's not like this hasn't happened in the past to both Christians, Jews, and even people, if you go to India, similar things happen there, right? So they have it when Islamic states or groups of people come together in large amounts and they convert a city-state or a country or whatever to benefit them because there's more of them or whatever, right? They politically take over. They tend to then shift towards Sharia law and the like, which immediately makes somebody like that's a Jew there like a second or third class citizen by default. Okay, and yeah, you could say, oh, maybe the Jews are bad for, or wrong for making essentially, at least in terms of certain things, maybe like voting and stuff like that, only Jews are allowed to do that. But I think that's what he's getting at, is that, oh, only Jews are allowed to do that, only Jews are allowed to participate in certain things or whatever, right? Or whatever. I think there's a good reason for it, because they genuinely fear, due to history, right? History matters. Things that have happened in the past, not just going like one of the more recent ones, obviously, is, you know, World War II and Hitler, the Nazis, etc. So, yeah, I don't think there's much more to say. I'll be right back. And I'm back. So, I will be taking a slight detour to go help my brother out. Are you...
They don't even need help.
It'd make it easier if I'm there with you, though, I think. Excuse me. So yeah, if you want to shoot me an invite. Are you up there? Where are you?
I'm just putting this in my stash real quick. I had too much crap in my freaking in my inventory.
Yeah, I gotta empty my fire break matter. Why? There's nothing there I can do regarding my inventory. I kind of wish at every waypoint where there's like a town or something, they had a stash. Like, you don't have to have all the people there to be able to do everything. Like, but have a goddamn stash there at least.
Put him back. I'm like great at it.
Yeah, just give me an invite when you get there. Like right outside. And then I'll hit up the teleporter. And so that I can join you right outside.
I'm actually like great with
Okay, yeah.
I'm at a statue. Building statue.
Yes, transfer now. Let's do it. Teleporting to Baabyy. Alright, what do we gotta do in here? Explore Told Duva.
Here, hatred burns eternal.
What's happening here?
Oh, there's a book over there.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I got it already. Maybe?
The roots of the great oak parted, and Vasily emerged
Yeah,
from
I've
his
seen
rest.
this. I
A
read that.
memory?
Tortura will not fall to you, Astaroth.
Find the druid spirits. So, yeah, it's just... They're on your ass. Like, literally just ignored me. There we go.
I need more time.
Everything is ruined. It's all ash.
I'm not ready yet.
It's useless.
That's one. I think it's 3 in total.
Anger will feed me for ages.
It's a bar, yeah. I think it's 3 or 4.
I need more time.
Spirits! Why have you left us?
I got a Paragon.
I need more time.
Fire in my blood, my skin.
Your efforts are futile. You will join them in eternal misery.
Yes.
I need more time.
Where are you going, booby? Hey, Booba. I'm going down here. This way. Shortcut. Should I wait for you? Okay.
I need more time.
They are forsaken, forgotten.
Their rage, sweet as the day we arrived. You shall feed the flames, you who is touched by hatred.
Oh, that's what the fuck is that?
The smoke! I can't see.
Please, Mercy.
Mercy.
I need more time.
Congrats. And now for the final battle.
Feed on your torment, courageous.
I'm not ready yet.
Get wrecked, motherfucker. Nice.
You will
I just
never
gotta
harm
get this.
another soul.
You're welcome. I gotta go up here and hit that thing up. Or maybe I can hit it?
Happens rarely.
Nope.
But I need my allies.
Happens rarely, but I need my allies as well. Oh, it's saying that, yeah, you had... You need to... There. You are welcome. Yeah. Okie doke, so I got all 3 of those done. Right, the next thing I was gonna do... Oh, come on, computer. Don't tell me I have to fucking restart. I think I might need to... I hope I don't need to restart. Okay, I'm going to restart my computer, which means I'm going to have to restart my stream and everything. But that's okay. It'll all eventually be in a playlist, etc. So I will